welcome to my channel. I am Zodiac Bandit, and today we're going to be recapping episode 94 of Campaign 3 of Critical Role. This one was a fun one and a return to just the straight up standard bells, hells, and no more extracurricular stuff. We're back to the main story, so let's get into it. We start with the party having just reunited with Dory and Storm. They've all just shared drinks in honor of their lost friends. They're getting ready to go to bed. Ashton says that he's going to need a few days before he feels right. Fern goes over to him and gives him a hug and apologizes to him for what happened. Ashton thinks it's time to go to sleep, and he weirdly leaves the tent. Orem thinks it's best for them to rest up and figure it all out in the morning. Lana remembers that they now have to explain everything they saw to the council. Imogen tells Dorian she's glad to have him back, and Dorian says he's glad to be back. He asks if Ashton will be alright, and the party say, honestly, no. Dorian knew he was with FCG the longest, so he probably knows this hurts him the most. Lana says Ashton said that he feared FCG would do something like this and was trying to stop it. Fern goes outside to see Ashton. Ashton is just next to the entrance to the tent that they're in. Fern asks if he's going to be okay, and he says that he's not. He says he's been meaning to talk to her for a while, and there hasn't really been a good time. He asks if she wants to spend or have some company tonight. Fern says she would love some company and asks if they just hold each other. Ashton says yes, he was hoping for just that. Fern says that she just wants a long hug with someone and fall asleep. Ashton says he just wants to fall asleep with someone and wake up with them. Fern says that might not be easy to do. She tends to move around at night. They head back inside the tent, and the group find their beds and eventually rest. Orem fights it the longest and watches his friends all fall asleep before he does. Fern, at some point during the night, comes to a fuzzy daze and wakes up a little bit. She is the big spoon with Ashton, obviously. Her vision comes back eventually, and there is some sort of creature on her shoulder. It is a gray, fuzzy sugar glider. She looks at it, and it jumps off her shoulder. She gets up and starts to follow it for some reason. She tries to carefully leave, and she stealths out with a 15. Orem's passive perception is 16 when sleeping, 33 when awake, which is fucking insane. Ashton doesn't notice Fern get up. Fern watches this little creature go towards the exit and looks back at her and tries to beckon her forward. Orem wakes up and asks what she's doing. She says she's just going for a walk, and he goes back to sleep. She steps out into the encampment and sees the red glow of Rudas above. No one seems to be bothered by her moving about. She sees the sugar glider to the southwest part of the fort, and she follows it down towards that direction. Eventually, she follows it to a hole in the wall of the encampment. It looks back at her and then goes through the hole in the wall. Orem, not actually going back to bed, pokes his head out and sees Fern going in this direction. Fern looks through the hole, and it's very small. She can see the hole. She can see through the hole and just sees the red glow of the moon beyond the wall. She then wild shapes into a cockatiel, and then she makes her way through. Orem follows her over there. He gets to the wall and sees this all happen. He keeps his distance, but is going to stay close and aid if she needs any. Fern steps out into the Hellcatch Valley. She can see the start of the sunrise. She sees the sugar glider in a dead tree, or a leafless tree. It starts to glide into the valley, and she follows it. Orem gets a running start and jumps, trying to flee bound off a tent and to get on top of the wall. He successfully does so, as his acrobaticness is unmatched. He can see the wall was made magically. He then looks over and sees Fern off in the distance, and he jumps down after her once she starts to get out of his vision. Fern continues to follow the glider south. Fern tries to ask it where it's going, but it doesn't understand her, and she can't understand it. She continues to follow it because it's cute. The glider eventually stops and jumps in the air, and just stays there, as if it's floating, or as if it landed on something. As Fern watches, a shape begins to emerge from where this thing was floating. A dark gauntlet and then more familiar dark armor appears. Sora Lord Zuda is now looking at Fern in this open space. Orem drops the second he sees this. Zuda says it's going to be hard to have a conversation with her in this form. Fern drops her wild shape and she stands tall before him. Zuda says it seems Odahan has fallen. He can smell it on her. Well done. Fern says, hi, Daddy. Nice to meet him. He says it's a pleasure to meet her officially. Yeah, I imagine he's aware that they've met in other means. She asks what he wants, and he says that he can feel that she walks with a secret fire within her. Dark flames within her looking to consume and it's much stronger than anything that he's ever made, much more ancient. She says that she doesn't know what he means. He says that his impatience seems to be his biggest failing, but he is proud of her as she has lived up to the bloodline she came from. His blood should have made a powerful root as born, not the farm girls. He thinks maybe Fern can be the one to walk through the hollow cage and awaken it. He apologizes and says that he's been absent, but he wants to set it right in the 11th hour. Fern says that she doesn't need anything from him, and he says that they are connected even if she doesn't want to be. Fern asks if he actually ever loved Birdie, and he says that she did her part, but Fern was the only reason he did anything with her. He wants Fern to go with him, to learn and be taught, to show how powerful his bloodline is. Fern says she can't leave her friends. Fern says to make up for him not being around, she wants his mount. He says he can give her whatever she wants from the Fey realms, they can hunt it together. He says it's amazing to be the apex predator. Fern says that she can't go with him. Fern asks if he is in league with Ludinus still, and Zuda says that they were, but times are changing, and he can make a play for power. Insight check from Fern with a 19, she gets a whisper. Orm is trying to read their lips, which he successfully does. He can read lips from miles away with a 33 passive perception. Zuda says that he can shepherd her into her true nature. She says that she can't leave, but maybe they can figure something out. She's made a family for herself and she can't leave them, but she likes his offer. She can't leave with him. She barely knows him. How can she trust he won't do anything bad? He says, Fern's a Thuda, it's in their nature to do bad things. Fern says it's Calloway. He says they don't have time for this, and he looks up at the moon. He says it may be better for her to face her demons. He then pulls out a dark metal twisted mirror. She casts Scorching Ray at it, and it hits the mirror to no avail. Fern looks into the mirror and sees herself, and this dark version of herself stares back and smiles. The mirror then shatters, and a dark Fern emerges from the mirror. Zuda starts to laugh and vanish from sight. The dark Fern says hi. They should have talked a long time ago. Fern asks what she wants, and the dark Fern says whatever anyone wants from my realm, to take her place. She then cracks her neck, or twists her neck, and 3 shadow ferns emerge around her. Orm is watching this and sends a message to Dorian, telling him where they are and that they need help. This does, in fact, wake Dorian. Dorian then wakes up the others and he tells them that he got a message. Ashton gets ready immediately upon seeing that Fern is not in bed. They did all get a long rest, whereas Fern and Orm did not. They only got short rest. They were like just at the cusp, but missed it. The party don't see Fern or Orm anywhere, and Dorian didn't really get a where to go. Dorian tells Chetney to track them. He says that he's going to need his clothes on, but Imogen says that he's just going to transform into a werewolf anyway. He agrees and then sniffs Fern's bed, and there's no smell on it. He then sniffs Ashton and realizes what happened, that they were together. He then rolls a 15 with his perception. He's able to bring them to the hole in the wall, but after that, the scent is gone. Fern pulls out Pate and tells him to find Orm and Fern. Ashton uses his hammer and the immovable rod function within to make a platform for the party. Laud and the spider climbs over the wall. Dorian and Chetney fly over the wall using Dorian's boots, and the others climb over using the hammer. Some of the guards ask Imogen what's going on, and she simply says nothing. Meanwhile, Fern casts Earthbind on Dark Fern, and this starts combat. Matt pulls out a map that I will always be jealous of, and I will always make it clear that I am jealous of them. Orm is up first. He runs forward and bait and switches with Fern, giving her 4 more AC. Fern is happy to see him, and now Fern is up. She finishes her turn on Earthbind on the Dark Fern. The Dark Fern fails the save, and her flying speed is reduced to 0, so she can't fly even if she wanted to. It's now Dark Fern. It's an exaggerated version of Fern, but much, much darker. Much like the one that we saw in EXU. She says that Fern wastes her gifts and that she is a disgrace. She then moves up and then claws at Fern. Hitting with a 25 for 7 damage, that is cold damage, and 3 psychic damage. Fern uses her gifts from Captain Novos to become ice resistant for a little while. The next attack is a crit for 8 total damage. Not a great roll, but still. Fern loses her resistance to ice at this moment because it only lasts for a turn, which is a harsh reading of the rule, but hey, that's the rule. The Shadow Ferns then circle up around Orm and Fern. They all attack Fern. One misses. The first one misses 1 and then hits 1 for 5 damage. The second one misses both attacks. The third one hits for 4 damage, and then the last one misses 1 and then crits for 14 damage. A smorgasbord of hitting and not hitting there. They all just laugh around Fern. Orm is now up. He bait and switches with Fern again, this time only giving her 3 bonus AC, losing the 4 from before. Orm thinks to Nanamori, your granddaughter's father is here and we have no time, we need help. He then swings for a shot at Fern, hitting. This deals 12 damage. The second one also hits, dealing 12 more damage, and the third one hits for 11 more damage. He then action surge and hits for 11 damage, 9 damage, and 10 damage as he hits all 3, because Orm is cracked. Fern is now up. She activates the Spark of Raushan, transforming into her elemental form. She then summons Mister off to the side a bit. Dark Fern is up. She moves behind Fern, and she claws at Fern, missing the first attack, and hits the second one, dealing 2 fire damage. 2 ice damage. No, I said that right. She takes 2 fire damage from Fern because she's in her elemental form, but Fern takes 6 cold damage and 2 psychic damage, and then 19 sneak attack damage because Fern has sneak attack. She needs to make a con save. Natural 1. Fern's neck is slashed and she can no longer speak. It seems this sneak attack has some fucking other properties, which is nasty. The other 3 shadows then swarm Fern, and they all attack her again. The first one misses both attacks. The second one hits. The first attack, she takes 7 damage, but then deals 6 cold damage back, and then misses the second attack. The third shadow crits for 8 damage, and hits for 6 more damage, and she takes 8 fire damage total. Orm is now up. He bait and switches with Fern, giving her 6 AC this time. Orm then swings for a shadow and crits for the first one, but I missed the damage, unfortunately. He then misses the second and third attack. The Fern uses a slippery dash to move away. It seems to be a nice little feature she has. Fern is now up. She makes Mr. shoot a flaming poop at one of the shadows and hits for 6 damage. Fern then deactivates the shard. Everyone around her needs to make a dex save or get hit by an explosion. Dark Fern saves, 2 of the shadows fail, and 1 of the other shadows succeed. An explosion goes off, and Fern deals 41 damage to all of those who fail, and 20 damage to those who succeed. Orm, however, did save. Good. 2 of the shadows are killed in this fire, and the others are very hurt. Fern then gets 2 more points of exhaustion, meaning she has 4, which is nuts. Her hit points are halved, but she is very low anyway, so it doesn't make a difference. The Dark Fern tries to lift off the ground, but she can't fly because of Earthbind, which Fern kept through all of these attacks, which is wild. She then suddenly teleports up very high, and the other shadow moves away. They both throw what are known as void darts at Fern. Dark Fern misses, but the shadow hits, knocking her out, and because the shadow void dart hit, it teleports up and it slashes at Fern, giving her 2 death saves. Orm immediately pours a health potion down Fern's mouth for 17 HP, and then Orm stands over top of Fern, giving her 2 more AC. Fern is up. Fern's voice is back. Luckily, it only lasted 1 turn where it was gone. She then casts Scorching Ray at 3rd level for 4 rays, all of them being sent toward Dark Fern. The first one hits for 4 damage, the second one misses, the third one misses, and the last one hits for 6 damage. With the last one, Fern kills Dark Fern. The laugh leaves Dark Fern as she is shattered into a million pieces, much like the mirror. Mister then fires at the shadow, hitting for 9 damage. Shadow Fern is up, but she vanishes at the end of Dark Fern's turn, but she's dead. Fern yells, fuck, as she is very close to death. And suddenly both Orm and Fern hear clapping. Suddenly Gloomglut appears, and Zuda is on his back. He says that it's not self-preservation, but in fact protection that she strives for. He says she is capable of greatness and asks why she wants to cling to lesser beings. Fern says that she loves these people. That's what she cares about. Why go with him? They all seem miserable up there. He says he now knows what is important to Fern and needs to develop the next lesson. He sees much promise in her, and she will emerge her true self. He knows his child, and it's in his nature. He says Ludinus and his people don't matter, nor does the Unseelie court. Zuda the Black will become the God Eater. He'll be watching Fern closer from now on. At this moment, Gloomglut flies off and begins to screech. The fort starts to alarm, and the rest of the party hear Gloomglut off in the distance as they're getting over the wall. Ballista bolts are being shot toward Gloomglut, missing Fern and Orym barely, and they start running back toward the encampment. The dragon flies off towards the Tristan dig site. The party eventually meet up with Fern and Orym on the other side of the wall. Ashen says they look like shit, and the party walk around to the doors of the encampment. Dorian heals Fern for 17 hit points. Imogen asks what Zuda wanted and how they're still standing. Fern says that he wanted to test her, not necessarily kill her. Orym says he thinks that Zuda thinks Fern is the vessel. Lana says he thinks he manufactured her, so that might be right. Lana clarifies to Fern Zuda intends to use Fern as the vessel for Predathos. This then sinks into Fern a bit, leaving her a little bit stunned. Dorian asks if the dragon is her father, and the party explain what's up with the whole family situation. Cheney wonders how he found them and wonders if the camp is compromised. Lana says they made themselves pretty known while they were on the moon, so it's not that hard to figure out where they are. They ask why she went, and she tells them that she followed a Q creature, and the party tells her to stop doing that until she explains what the Q creature was, and then some of them agree. They're worried that the camp is compromised, but they know that this isn't really hidden per se, so it doesn't really matter. Orym tells the party that Zuda wants to recruit Fern and doesn't seem to be working with Ludinus anymore. Imogen says that it seems like Ludinus is running out of allies. The party think that's a good. The less allies, the better. Means he's going to be weaker. The party rests up and explain the whole story to Dorian. Literally the whole story of the campaign that he wasn't there for. The encampment are still on high alert from the morning's events, and Fern did grab a portion of the mirror and brought it back with her. Cheney doesn't feel safe anymore at the encampment, not just because of Fern, but because they kicked the hornet's nest, and the hornet's nest is right near them. Ashen doesn't think that there's anywhere else for them to run. Lana thinks they need to get a bit further away than 100 feet. Exaggeration, obviously. Imogen says they need to tell everyone what they learned, and they should look to Aor, as that is where Ludinus is. Cheney thinks they should call a meeting right now, and the party agree. Lana asks if there's anyone they need to see, like Joe, and inform them about FCG, but they don't know where he is at the moment. They go to meet Keyleth and go to her tent. As they go, they find that there are soldiers surrounding her tent that seem to be filled with purpose. They can hear a meeting going on inside the tent, and they hear Keyleth's voice. A guard stops them and tells them that there is a meeting going on, and Orym says to tell Keyleth that her savior blade is here. He goes inside and then returns, telling the party to step inside. Inside they see Keyleth, Mythtaker, Key Mandozi, and Keeper Topher. Keyleth looks very tired and like she hasn't slept. She stands tall when she sees the party walk in. She sees that they are well rested. Orym says they had some action this morning and asks if she knows who Zuda is. She says that she is well aware of the Unseelie Court and the Vanguard's connection, but finds it weird how open the court has been with it. Fern tells them Zuda is her father, and Topher asks why they didn't tell him before. Imogen says that it was a recent discovery, which is a kind of mild lie they've known for a while. Actually, they've known since before they met all of these characters. Fern says last night was the first time they've actually talked, which is true. Kind of. Fern says he talked with the hollowed cage, and the council members look at each other, seemingly unaware of what that is. And Fern says that Zuda wants Fern to be the vessel for Predathos. Imogen asks if they all know about vessels, and the council doesn't. Imogen explains that the Vanguard need a vessel to bring the divine power of the God Eater back through the glass, probably the hollow cage. Imogen says that it seems that the vessel, as of right now, is her mother, but she is actually a spy for the party now, hopefully. Ashen says that it seems everyone was looking to betray each other as soon as possible. Cheney says he doesn't think they have much time with how brazen the enemy is acting, with especially how Zuda just showed up here last night, or this morning. Lana explains that they did do some explosion missions and had a rescue for Eva Roa, so that kicked the hornet's nest. Cheney asks if the council has talked to her yet. Topher says yes, and she's been very helpful explaining the factions. They want to reach out to the Volition soon and act as one. He says that many divine champions are also gathering, and he thinks that they have a shot with this. Keyleth says that the Vanguard faithful is growing here on Exandria, and it's leading to a lot of mistrust in what the Council is trying to do. It's been hard to gather their resources with all the chaos that has happened by the solstice, unlocking numerous troubles around the world. Keyleth says that she's going to continue gathering her allies and see who is going to be willing to come out of retirement to aid them. Interesting. She says her and the other leaders have to put their heads together to figure this out. Keyleth asked about what Ludinus is doing up in Islecross, also known as Aor. Chenny brings out the Aorian device, and Mandosian is in awe of it. Keyleth asks if they know where Ludinus is. Imogen says that they think he's an Aor dealing with something stopping them from getting more of these devices. Topher says Everoa said that they were running into problems. Maybe this is what she meant, and they don't have any more of these devices to look into. And maybe their questions they're looking for answers in is within these devices. Keyleth says that she knows some people with experience in Aor. She leaves and then comes back and says that her ally is busy with something, but they're sending another friend who has been a researcher of the place. Keyleth says the more they can claw away from the enemy, the more they can halt them. She normally wouldn't ask them to help so closely after another dangerous mission and what happened to them, but she must in this case. Fern says, why stop now? Keyleth asks Dorian if he's ready, and Dorian says shit's dangerous out there, but he's not sure if they can trust in the gods. It's going to take people, and he can't think of any better people. Keyleth says her allies have an idea, and they're going to try to set the stage for them. Keyleth says that she is one of the few people in Exandria who has actually met the gods, and they must do what they can to ensure that they are aligned with them. If this group wants to step up and do this task, they must do so soon. Keyleth looks to the rest of the council, and Topher says that he wasn't sure about this group at first, but this wouldn't be the first time a bunch of scrappy fuck-ups have given him more than he expected. Lana asks if this means that the party is to go to Aor, and Imogen says yes. Lana asks what happens if they were to run into Ludinus, and Keyleth says to slow him down, stop him maybe, but don't let him take Fern or Imogen. They seem to be a key to this. Chetney says, fuck you guys. It's incredible that they send this group of fuck-ups to the moon and find out everything that they need to, and then send them to Aor to stop Ludinus with just a good luck. He says the decision makers should go through them, the party. They are the keepers of knowledge in this instance, not the rest of the council. Topher leans forward and says that they appreciate what the party has done, but others are fighting around the world as well. He then lists a bunch of dangers that seem to be popping up around the world. He says that they can only ask them to do what they are best suited for. Keyleth tells Topher that Chetney isn't wrong. Keyleth says that they should have been more clear. She's had to make a bunch of hard decisions with very little time to consider and apologizes for not talking or thinking about them. Chetney says he accepts her apology and he just wanted to see the reaction to what he said. Lana says the last time they fought Ludinus, he parried away their airship, and when they fought another time, it was just a clone and they almost lost Fern to him. Imogen says they lost a friend to one of his henchmen. Keyleth says if they want to opt out of this fight, they can. Chetney says no, he just wanted to see their reaction to remind them how it feels to be at the bottom of the totem pole. Ashton says Ludinus is ready for armies, not people, and they are what the council need. Chetney asks for a bag of items to aid them, maybe help with the less stealthy. Topher laughs at this. Keyleth says as she gathers allies, she's sure that some of them will bring some gifts for them. Chetney asks if they can show what the 5 elders of the hive mind look like. Lana makes a minor illusion of them. They can see the Ryloran figures with the dangling thin limbs that are no longer needed. Chetney warns them to beef up their psychic resistance, as this is what they seem to be good at. Keyleth says the enemy have many pillars of defense, it's best to attack them all at once, and it seems best to use smaller groups in more sensitive areas. Imogen says that definitely worked for them while they were up there. Keyleth says hopefully the next time they meet, she'll have slept some more and have more friends to show them. Orm asks how much time they have, and Keyleth doesn't know how long they have until all of their forces are here. They travel through different means of magic and non-magic of both types. Heroes, bounty hunters, all sorts. Chetney says that they must go to Aor now then. At this moment there is a commotion outside. A human walks in. He seems to be a bit straggly with shaggy hair, and he is very disheveled. He says that he is Seth Domade. Imogen asks how much he knows about Aor. He says that he learned a bit about it during the time where the Assembly and the Vanguard shared the area, but since then the Vanguard took over. Seth asks what's going on. Keyleth introduces them, and they are to be respected. Seth then greets them properly. Keyleth also says that they just returned from Ruidus, and Seth is very excited to learn about what they learned on the moon. Laudna says the enemy has many of these, and then points to the Aorian device and asks if he knows of Ludinus. He says that Ludinus is the highest member of the Cerberus Assembly, who have all left the Empire. And most of the Cerberus Assembly have aligned themselves with Ludinus, which is fucking dangerous. He says there is one person that they could go talk to. Chet asks how many members of the Assembly there are, and Seth says 8. Chetney asks who they will be meeting, and Seth says that he'll explain on the way. Lana then pulls out the globe that they had on Ruidus and says that this is the inside is Predathos. He says that it's very creepy and begins to write down everything they say. After a bit of show and tell from Laudna showing off the globe, the fetus is in a jar, etc., Keyleth tells Seth to be their escort as they travel around for now. Imogen asks where they're going, and Seth says that it's best not to say here or say their name just in case that they are watching. Ashton asks how they're going to be transporting around, and Seth says that they will be their transport. Laudna asks where Joe is, and Keyleth says that he is in Whitestone helping them get ready to have an edge on the battlefield. Laudna says that he should know about FCG. Keyleth says that she can tell him. Laudna asks if Ashton would rather be the one to tell him, and Ashton says that he would be the one to tell him. Keyleth asks where Seth is going to take the party, and Seth says Zadash. They can resupply there if they need. Ashton says they need cash, and Topher says how much. Chetney says 10k after a bit of back and forth, and Topher tells the guards to collect 10k gold for the party. Dorian grabs his armor that he ordered from Keyleth's people. The party then empty out the dead body parts from the hole. Gross. Topher says that he'll keep them for research after being very disgusted by the smell. As they empty out the bodies, Dorian whispers to Keyleth, "Are you sure they're ready for this?" And Keyleth says, weirdly from personal experience, probably. Because, Grog like to keep fucking body parts. You know what? I've noticed that keeping body parts of their enemies or monsters is something that happens in every D&D game. So, Seth says this is a strange first impression and is excited to see what comes next. Keyleth goes over to Fern and asks how she's doing. Fern asks how she is doing, and Keyleth says that she is perpetually going. Fern says that she is okay. Keyleth says that she looks exhausted. Fern agrees, and she casts Greater Restoration, or Keyleth casts Greater Restoration on Fern, getting rid of 2 of her points of exhaustion. Now Ashton and Fern are only at 1 each because they finished their long rests. Fern thanks her for this, and Keyleth says that she wishes she could give more, but she needs some protection for where she's going. Laudna asks where that is, and Keyleth says that she's going to cross Exandria to gather both friends and adversaries. I wonder who she's talking about. I feel like most of Vox Machina's enemies were killed off, so I'm kind of confused by that. Fern says she has Asmodeus on speed dial if they need. Topher, Keyleth, and Mendoza all look at her terrified. Keyleth says if they need, and then looks at the hand and says maybe not. Keyleth says it's time for her to go, and she speeds off toward a tree. Orym follows. Orym and Keyleth stop, and Orym says that he knows that they are unsure of her character, but Chetney is a good man and can attest to the character of the rest of the party. He says none of them are going down a dark path. Keyleth says that she knows, and if they did, she knows that Orym would know what to do for it, or about it. Orym says that won't have to happen. Keyleth says that it seems communication is much easier now for some reason, so be sure to reach out to her if they need. She then goes off to the nearest tree. Orym goes back over to where the rest of the group is, and the council all go about their business. Dorian introduces himself to Mendoza, and then he leaves. The party look to Seth. He says to let them know when they're ready. Chetney shakes his hand and sniffs with a perception check of 20. He smells travel, equipment, and sweat, and like someone hasn't bathed in a couple of days. Chetney tells him to lead the way. Seth tells them to gather around, and then he teleports the party to Zadash. The party are in awe of the teleportation, and Imogen is mad that other people have really cool spells, like her mother stopping time. Seth asks who her mother is, if she can do that. Imogen explains who her mother is, and Seth starts to put some pieces together. Lana asks why he acts so strange whenever they mention lewdness. Has he met lewdness before? Seth says no, he hasn't, but he has seen the projections that lewdness has been putting up for weeks. The party then take in the street that they landed in. They are on the cobblestone streets and roads of Zadash, and they see the well-made houses all around them. The rooftops of some of these houses seem to be covered in damage, and there's smoke smell in the air. There are people in the streets, but they seem to be very tense. It seems there was a fight here very recently. Seth says they should move, and Orm asks if Seth knows what happened. Seth says no, but he thinks that something or someone was freed or someone was waiting for the right moment to strike. Seth leads them through the streets, and eventually he takes them to the Tri-Spire District. For those of you in Campaign 2, you're well aware of the Tri-Spire District. It seems like a richer part of the city. Seth asks if they can all turn invisible, and for the most part, the party can turn them invisible. They go off to the side. A guard seems to find them a bit suspicious and then follows them. He takes them down an alleyway. Chetney, Dorian turn invisible on their own. Imogen turns herself and Orm invisible, and Seth gets the rest. They all then hide up against a wall, and they all roll stealth. Chetney a 25, Laudna a 10, Dorian a 15, Fern a natural 1, Imogen was a high 20s, Orm 20, and Ashton 22. The guard steps down into the alleyway and walks around, but doesn't find the party. Seth tells them to go back to the gate of the Tri-Spire District. They see the guards and they're able to stealth past them with no issue. They then move their way through the Tri-Spire following the instructions of Seth until he takes them down an alleyway and drops the invisibility and tells them to walk with confidence. He then leads them to a marketplace. There are people here moving about as well, but it is also very tense. Imogen asks in his head if they are going to have to fight someone. Out loud, because Seth doesn't really like the inside head thing, says, when I say do not panic, he needs them to go and grab the person and restrain them. If this works, there will be no fight, but he does have a plan B if need be. Chetney asks what he knows, and Seth says not much, but a friend told him where this person is hiding. They then reach the store. It's called the Chastity's Nook. God damn it. For those of you who don't know, this is like a smut bookshop from Campaign 2, so great. Seth says to be respectful and to not gawk and to not talk to the owner very much. They step in, and there is a very powerful scent in the air. They're in a long entrance hallway. There are a bunch of knickknacks and keepsakes, and as they get further in, there is more nudity upon these knickknacks and keepsakes and some of the art. As they're walking, a woman walks out and asks how they can help, and her name is Iva. This is the same fucking owner from Campaign 2. Imogen says they're looking for porn. She says that's toward the back. Weird. She then starts showing them a bunch of porn books, including Tusk Love, a classic book. We've all read Tusk Love, I know it. Seth steps forward and asks if they have other employees here, and Iva says Irma is in the back, and if you want to speak with her, they can. Iva calls for Irma and tells her to help the party out to look for some smut. The party goes into the back room. They go through like a curtain doorway. They see many bookshelves that have books on display. There's a bit of smoke in the air. And in the far corner of the room, there is a female half-elf in her mid-20s. She is reading and welcomes the party. Seth closes the door into the room and locks it. And says they'd like to speak to her. Irma puts down her book, and Seth says, Bren sends his regards. For those of you who don't know, or who aren't caught up with Campaign 2, I guess. Spoilers ahead. Bren is the true name of Caleb Widogast. So hopefully you skipped forward if you didn't want to know that. Irma then looks forward intensely. Seth then says, do not panic, and the party move. Chetney tries to bind her with a curse of the Blood Hunter, but she saves. Imogen then tries to cast command on her, but she saves that too. Ashton then takes his hammer and pushes it up against the wall and uses the immovable rod function. This works, but Irma can still move her hands. She tries to cast a spell, but Lana counterspells it. She must roll a high roll as the spell is 7th level, and Lana rolls a 21, which works. The spell is countered. It looked like it was about to be the same teleportation spell that Seth used. Lana uses her unsettling presence. Dorian then is up and tries to cast a force cage at 7th level, but Irma counterspells, and her counterspell works, unfortunately. Orm then uses Seedling to trap one of the hands of Irma, and Irma fails and her hand is successfully trapped. Imogen casts telekinesis to try to restrain her, and this works. She's restrained. Seth then steps up, and a wave of magic comes from him. An anti-magic field fills the chamber. The illusion cast on Irma is now gone. She is now a woman, human, blonde hair in her mid-40s with a scar across her face. The party then look back at Seth, and he no longer appears to be Seth. He's a dark elf with white hair that goes down to his shoulder. He is also floating above the ground. It's motherfucking Essek. Goddamn. Gotta love it. He introduces himself to the party as an enemy of lewdness. He then says that this is Astrid, the successor of Trent Ickathon. Astrid says that she is not the successor, but the usurper. Essek says that it's time they talk, and the episode ends. Goddamn, I love these Campaign 2 references. So, there you have it. Episode 94 of Campaign 3 of Critical Role. Essek is back. Essek being back is awesome. I knew right away that this Seth dude wasn't Seth. I knew it. And the party, if you could watch on their heads, like on their faces, they all like sort of like realize that Seth Damade is like some sort of bullshit cover name. And they all knew right away. That's why Chetney instantly tried to sniff. It was a little metagamey, but fuck it, who cares? It's fun. It's cool and fun for them to do that kind of stuff. I figured out right away that the Irma character was Astrid. I was like, oh, it's got to be Astrid. I was writing down as I was going through, because I make these notes as the episode happens. I was like, hopefully this person's Essek. And then I said, this has got to be Astrid once Irma was introduced. And I was like, this is fucking sick. And I'm very excited to see where that goes. This is a great episode for me. I loved this episode because I'm a big Campaign 2 fan. It's my favorite campaign, so obviously I'm going to love it whenever those get referenced. So seeing characters like Essek and Astrid return just make it for me. I loved the sort of 2v4 fight that happened between Orm and Fern. It really solidifies their friendship to me and how much like they care for each other and how far Orm is willing to go to back her up, but also give her that space because he understands what she needs. So I very much like that this was like a character-driven episode for those two. I also love these strides toward the Fern-Ashton relationship, so very excited for that. This is just an all-around very good episode. So, yeah. Very good episode. Fucking Essek's back. I love Essek. I'm so excited that he's back. Anyway, I'm going to call it there, because I could gush about this episode for a little while longer. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below about this episode, and I will see you guys on Tuesday for whatever video I make next. Peace. As they empty out the bodies, Dorian whispers to Keyleth, "Are you sure they're ready for this?" And Keyleth says, weirdly from personal experience, probably. Because, Grog like to keep fucking body parts. You know what? I've noticed that keeping body parts of their enemies or monsters is something that happens in every D&D game. So, Seth says that this is a very strange first impression, as if the Mighty Nine didn't keep it. Oh, fuck.